And welcome to our tribute for the Ari Kadosh, whose 451st Yortzeit is today. And we've gathered together 7 incredible educators who are going to give us a hologram of this amazing character and for us to understand the effect that he had on the world, on the Jewish nation and the Torah. So I'm delighted to start off with our own archaeologist and historian, Yosef Stepansky. Yosef has written several books, including one on the Ari, the shul in Tzfat, and has excavated several finds both in Tzfat and in the northern area of the Galil. And we're absolutely delighted to have you with us to give us your part of the hologram on the Ari.
Chavod. Boker Tov. I'll be talking about the passing of the Ari. We really shouldn't start with this. We should end with this. But that's the way it came out. And some say, actually, the beginning really is with his passing. Because we didn't understand, no one really knew who the Ari was before he passed away. But the Ari Kadosh, here we're seeing what we look, maybe a portrait of him. It could be, not a photograph of course, but maybe a picture that was found here in Tzfat. No one knows where it was found by Yechezkel Meiri. And on the passing of the Ari, there are many pre-events and stories in different sources. And maybe I'll say already that during the time that he was here, in a number of occasions, the Ari especially mentioned to Rabbi Chaim Vital, be careful, because things are going on, you're doing things, I'm doing things, I'm telling secrets. And he was hinting a number of times that he soon will not be in this world. We have a number of events like that. For instance, we have two events where he complains about Rabbi Chaim Vital. Rabbi Chaim Vital urges him, he nudges him to tell him more and more secrets, for him to understand passages in the Zohar and things like that. And the Ari tells him, be careful, I mean, it's not so good, I'm not supposed to tell you everything. There are secrets that I'm not allowed to tell anybody, but he nudges him. And the Ari says, you know what, it's not so good, we're doing this. And it seems that even within the year, I'm not going to be here to continue to tell you. Even in one event, we know that Rabbi Chaim Vital writes, or actually in Shivchei Ari it said, in Shivchei Ari it's mentioned that the Ari, after he said a few of the secrets that he shouldn't have said, he said that he even saw Samael, he saw the bad angel, and the bad angel was hinting him, your time is pretty soon coming up. And not only that, but the son of the Ari, Moshe, got sick, and he passed away within a week. So even Moshe, the son, who was buried here in Tzfat next to the Ari, passed away in one of these events where the Ari was telling secrets that maybe he shouldn't have said. He himself knew he shouldn't have said these secrets, but Rabbi Chaim Vital and others nudged him for him to say. And we have another story about a quarrel that took place in the Beit HaIsger, in a place where the Ari gathered his 2 prime students. He brought them together with their families. They put them in one yard, in one place called Beit HaIsger. And after a week or so, the women started quarreling. And the husbands, the Talmidim of the Ari, also started getting into this quarreling. And the Ari didn't like that. And here also, it says, the Ari warned the people that what's going on isn't good at all. Okay, and here also he met Samael. He saw the angel, a bad angel, looking down, and not liking what he saw. So this quarreling, maybe has something to do with what's going on today. Also, we shouldn't quarrel at all, even politically, even what's going on today. So we have these events occurring during the 2 years, more or less, a little more than 2 years that the Ari was here in Tzfat. We also know that pretty shortly before the Ari's death, he was with his students at the graves of Shmaya v'Avtalion in Gush Chalav, not far from here. And there he announces to his students that Shmaya v'Avtalion told him to tell them that they should pray for the Mashiach ben Yosef, that he shouldn't pass away, he shouldn't die. Okay? He didn't say anything more than that. Okay? And only afterward, after he passed away, Rabbi Chaim Vital writes, now we understand in retrospect who he was talking about. He was talking about himself as the Mashiach ben Yosef. So we have these stories before his death, and even on his deathbed, we have a story of how people used to come in shifts, like to take care of him. He was very sick, and Rabbi Chaim Vital left, and in came Rabbi Yitzchak Kohen, one of his students also, and he was the one who was there at the time of the death of the Ari. And just before he passed away, the Ari yelled at him, leave now, you're a Kohen. Okay, and he was hinting, I'm about to pass away. And so that story we also have in Sha'ar Gilgulim of Rabbi Chaim Vital. But I think the two last stories I'm going to tell now are probably the most interesting one. Also, one more thing. We also have one hesped. We have one eulogy on the Ari given by not his prime student, but one of his students, Rabbi Shmuel Ozida. We have his eulogy, and it was published by Professor Mordechai Pechter in this book, Mitzfonot Tzfat. And the interesting part about this eulogy is that it's not so interesting, in that in the eulogy it doesn't tell the stories that we know afterward about the Ari, of the Ari looking at people's foreheads and seeing all the sins of people on their foreheads, or things that could be seen as like miracles that the Ari performed, or talking to the animals. We don't hear about that in the eulogy. In the eulogy we hear how the Ari was a great Talmid Chacham, a very important rabbi who knew secrets, okay, Hasod and Kabbalah. I don't even know if the word Kabbalah is in the eulogy itself, but it's Divrei Torah of an important rabbi in Tzfat. But the fact that in the eulogy he says, he praises everybody who came to the Halvaya. He praises people that you came to the Halvaya. What does that mean? That means the Ari wasn't so well known and famous by everybody in Tzfat until he passed away. And if he praises people that they even came to the Halvaya, that means that not everybody came. Not all of Tzfat were present at the Halvaya of the Ari. So the Ari had his students, and they were the ones who really knew about him most. Okay, others like the Alshech, of course, they knew about him, but it's hard for them to get into the world of Kabbalah and the secrets of the Ari. But I want to tell you now is two things that are less known, and when I read them, especially during the Corona that we just had and finished, Baruch Hashem, I realized that this is something really unique. And the first story is on Lag BaOmer, because Lag BaOmer wasn't a very famous and well-known celebration going on Lag BaOmer Timeron to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai before the Ari. It was known by the Mustarabim, by the Jews living here in Tzfat and the Galilee, who are here, who are descendants of the Jews living in Galilee for 2,000 years, like the Zinati family, like the Halevi and Levi families. Halevi, Shaul Halevi from the Alshech. These are the oldest families in all of Eretz Yisrael. And so these people used to go on Lag BaOmer to Meron, but they didn't make a big deal about it. Okay, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai became super famous, especially after the Zohar was rediscovered and published meaning printed. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai became super important, okay? And the person who told people we have to go to Meron on Lag BaOmer is the Ari himself, okay? And I don't think everybody knows that Rabbi Yosef Karo, our neighbor here, right next to the Alshech, Rabbi Yosef Karo himself didn't like the idea of so many people going to Meron and Lag BaOmer. When I say so many people, how many do I mean? If you remember, 4 years ago before the Corona, 500,000 people went to Meron and Lag BaOmer, 500,000. Then the Corona came, much less, and then 2.5 years ago, we had the catastrophe in Meron. There were only 100,000 people there, and happened what happened. And so 450 years ago, okay, when the Ari was here, how many people went to Meron and Lag BaOmer? If you ask me, maybe a few thousand. How many Jews were in Tzfat? 6,000, 7,000, 8,000. Okay, so how many went to Meron and Lag BaOmer? Maybe a few thousand. Rabbi Yosef Karo said that's too much because we have women and men together. The women, it says, by the Chida. Okay, Rabbi Yosef David Azulai brings this down. And Rabbi Yosef Karo says it's not good. The women go dressed up too beautifully. And there's no mechitza there in Meron. Rabbi Yosef Karo didn't like the idea of big throngs of people going to Meron. We're talking about just a few thousand then to Meron and Lag BaOmer. And in the end, the Beit Din, Rabbi Yosef Karo, the head of the Beit Din, he was 80 years old already. He said, don't go. Psak, din. We shouldn't go to Meron, Lag BaOmer. We shouldn't have throngs of people going. When the Ari heard this, he told his students, look what's going on. They're not letting us go to Meron. Oy vavoy. Rashbi wants us to come to Meron. Okay? It says, I'm quoting, Rashbi merutze mize. Rashbi wants us to come to Meron and Lag BaOmer. But now the crux of what I want to say, the Ari said, if we don't go to Meron, there'll be a plague. And he was called to Beit Din. He went to the Beit Din. He's 36, 37 years old. Rabbi Yosef Karo is 82 years old, the head of the Beit Din and the other great rabbis at Tzfat. And they ask him, young man, that it doesn't say young man, I'm adding that. It says, Rabbeinu Ha'ari, okay, what are you doing? We had a psak din, we shouldn't go to Meron. Okay, and what are you doing? You're saying people should go to Meron? So the Ari tells them, what can I do? Rashbi wants us to come there. Rashbi merutze mize. And if we don't go there, there'll be a plague. And then he added something, and he said, you know what? In this case, anybody who goes to Meron, and I'm adding this, and looks at the women with their beautiful clothing, that's their problem. That's everyone's problem, and not a problem of Klal Yisrael. And he was even intervening in the halachic psak din, okay? The halachic, how do you say psak din in English? The psak of Rabbi Yosef Karo. He was intervening in something in halacha. Anyway, Rabbi Yosef Karo and the other rabbis of the Beit Din heard this, and they got scared. They heard plague. They heard the word plague. Plague was a very scary thing, then and now. And they heard plague, and Yosef Karo annulled the psak. And from then on, most of us go to Meron, and like most of us go to Meron, like Ba'omer. There are still rabbis that say, rather not go. Stay in the yeshiva and learn, okay? But most people do go to Meron since then. But what happened in the end? The Ari was trying to prevent the plague, but the plague broke out anyway. And that's the second story. And Rabbi Chaim Vital, in his book, Book of Visions, Sefer HaChezionot, the Book of Visions, which is a autobiography of Rabbi Chaim Vital. It's divided into 4 parts. The first part is an autobiography. The second part is his dreams, his visions. And the third part are dreams and visions of other people about him. And the fourth part is on what the Ari told him about his soul and his Gilgulim. There's also Shala Gilgulim, but this is also a book of visions. And in the fourth part, the Ari describes and seemingly even blames himself for the death of the Ari. And here we hear
Chaim Vital.
what?
Chaim Vital blames himself.
Chaim Vital blames himself. Why? Because the Ari, I'm not going to quote it all in Hebrew, it's about 2.5 pages, okay? But Rabbi Chaim Vital writes, now I will write what my master told me a few days before he passed away. And my master told me, you should have been careful. You should have been more careful than you were. Because, you know, I only came here for you. I came here to give over to you all the secrets that I will give over. And I was warning you not to tell others, not to give other the secrets that I'm telling you. But Rabbi Chaim Vital had a rabbi, and his name was Rabbi Moshe Alshech. And so I assume that Rabbi Chaim Vital spent a lot of time sitting right here on this bench, okay, learning with the Alshech. By the way, the Alshech is the one who gave him smicha. But later on, many years later, and Rabbi Chaim Vital writes specifically that it wasn't hard for him not to tell over these secrets to other people, except to one person. There was one person that he had to listen to, and that is his rabbi, Rabbi Moshe Alshech. Rabbi Moshe Alshech nudged him, Rabbi Chaim Vital, tell me, because the Ari doesn't want to tell me, okay? And I fall asleep when he starts telling me, okay? Like Rabbi Yosef Karo. And so he nudged Rabbi Chaim Vital to tell him, and Rabbi Chaim Vital couldn't refuse his rabbi. So Rabbi Chaim Vital told him a few things to Rabbi Moshe Alshech, a few of the secrets of the Ari. And it seems that Rabbi Moshe Alshech was stunned, of course, hearing the secrets of the Ari, and he started hinting to other people of the greatness of the Ari. I don't know if Rabbi Moshe Alshech told over these secrets, okay? Rabbi Chaim Vital said, I thought I'm doing a big mitzvah, telling to my rabbi things that I heard from the Ari, and maybe this would help out the community itself, for more chozrim b'tshuva. It'll help out the community itself. And Rabbi Chaim Vital writes, I thought I was doing a good thing. But in the end, the Ari told him, Rabbi Chaim Vital, that wasn't a good thing. Because now people are coming into my house. People want to come into my house to hear me personally, what I have to say to them. Okay? And when people come into my house, it does me and you damage. Okay, it says damage, okay? Galamta li nezek. it says, damage. And throughout this quote here, he mentions damage beforehand. If you tell other people it'll do us damage, I would think spiritual damage. But now that he says that people are coming into my house and I can't keep them out, they come into my house, they come close to me, and I can't keep them out. Right after that it says, after 3 days, the Ari got infected in the plague. So what does that mean? That means he was infected probably by the people who were coming into his house when he was talking. They didn't wear masks then. They didn't know. Even today, not everybody wears masks or wore masks. And we all know what a plague is. So in the time of the corona, I read this, and I think that at least the damage, the physical damage that we're talking about here, was the damage that was inflicted on the Ari when he was infected in the plague by people coming into his house at that time. And after what it says, on Yom Erev Shabbat, after 3 days, on Friday of Parshat Matot Mas'eh, that was last week, Friday, Rosh Chodesh Av, is the day he was infected by the plague, and Yom Shlishi, Hey La'av, 5 days later, okay, then it was Tuesday, okay, now it's Sunday, tomorrow, today, but then 451 years ago, it was Tuesday. וביום שלישי, ה' לאב, נפטר לחיי העולם הבא. So he passed away on the 8th day of Av, a few days after he was infected in the plague, after people started coming into his house, and he wasn't able to keep them out because he was a very modest person. He didn't yell at people. He didn't push away people. The Ari was unique in this. He made people to stop quarreling. He was angry at his Talmidim. If they quarreled, he was angry at them. If they didn't answer immediately, let's go to Yerushalayim, okay? And he was, of course, a special charismatic person. So that's what I wanted to show you, to say how the Ari passed away in the plague that he tried to prevent. Okay, he thought he was going to prevent the plague, but didn't. Plagues were the big thing that everybody was scared about. Okay, I just want to finish up by saying that the way he talked to his students, the way he talked to the community in general, was different. It seems that he had about 30 students, 10 prime students. Rabbi Chaim Vital, of course, his prime student, according to Rabbi Chaim Vital himself. Okay, and the secrets he gave over to his students were afterward, of course, written and not published, but written by Rabbi Chaim Vital, published by his son Shmuel Vital, and the books that we're talking about, for instance, Sefer HaChezionot. Okay, this is not the original name of the book that Rabbi Chaim Vital gave. We gave this afterward. It was given the Book of Visions, Sefer HaChezionot. This book, Ken, he didn't mean to publish. He didn't mean to print. He put in the Geniza. He threw it out. Okay, it's his personal dreams. It was only published and printed later on. And so, the Ari was a special personality, and I don't know if it'll be mentioned later, but I talked about it yesterday in a tour. The Ari knew all the languages spoken here in Tzfat. His father was Ashkenazi, so he knew Yiddish. His mother was Sfaradia, so he knew Ladino. He knew Arabic and two types of Arabic. He knew Arabic, Palestinian Arabic, and he knew Arabic, Egyptian Arabic. He grew up in Egypt, okay? And he knew all, of course, Spanish, Ladino. He knew all the language. He could talk to everybody, but it seems that he was talking mainly to his students, to the 30 students of his, even though it seems from the Hesped that I mentioned before, he was known as a well-known, as a rabbi who knew a lot of things, okay? But it was only really the 30 students of him that really could understand. Even Halav Shmuel Uzida, who wrote the eulogy, probably was not one of his prime students, and maybe He wasn't in the inner circle of learning the inner parts of Kabbalah, which I don't understand anything about Kabbalah. Okay, I'm an archaeologist. Okay, אני בקושי מקובל על אשתי, I say. And so here we hear about the Ari, and only after he passed away did people really begin to understand what type of loss we had from this person who may have been the Mashiach ben Yosef himself. Okay.
Amazing. Thank you very much.
Thank
Go
you.
ahead. We just have a few minutes before Rabbi Schatz comes, so I just wanted to thank you for the presentation, this unique insight into the last stages of his life. But I wanted to ask you to share with the audience. We're super excited. I think it's such an honor to have such a talent like you, not only talking about archaeology, but you actually did archaeological finds here in Tzfat and in the north, and found some unique items. And we're going to invite you, please God, in the winter when the Alshech Academy is in full swing 5 days a week, to come and talk about a series which will be the series of the history of Tzfat, right?
History of Tzfat is 4,000 years, okay, way before the Ari. People come for Shabbat to the Ari, it's fine. They think that history begins with the Ari, or at least in the 16th century. But it begins way, way before, even in the time of the Tanakh. So, okay, a long history, but certainly the peak is the 16th century, the time of the Ari. You know, the president of Israel, Shazal, used to say, the period of the Ari, Tkufat Ari, we still say that, the 16th century, the period of the Ari. But we all know the Ari was here about 2 years, a little more than 2 years only, but we still call the whole 16th century, with all the other great rabbis like the Alshech living here at the time, we still call it the era of the Ari.
Amazing. It's amazing how one man in such a short time can change the world in such a dramatic way. I wanted to also say that one of the things we want to do, one of the advantages of the Alshech being here in Tzfat, is that we have access to all these tzaddikim that actually, apart from the Ari and the Yosef Karo, and perhaps the Alshech that we're now, there are many other tzaddikim that we don't know much about, we don't hear about. And we'd love to invite you to explain to us who these personalities were, what they wrote, and also they had very big impacts on the development of Tzfat as it developed.
Yeah.
So, B'ezrat Hashem.
Yeah.
But I can't leave you without asking this one question, because it's a question that's always been asking on my mind, and that is that, you know, we ask, why did Tzfat become such a key point in the position of Jewish culture? And you know, there's talks about it being one of the gateways to heaven. And you know, when I ask this question, the people say to me, "Oh, because all the tzaddikim came here. Look at how many people are buried here." But then I ask the question, well, what brought them here? How would you answer that question? What brought the tzaddikim dafka here to Tzfat?
Okay, that's the $1 million question. You're asking, why did they come to Tzfat and not to Yerushalayim? That's why we had the earthquake, to remind us that we're only Tzfat. What about Yerushalayim? So first of all, in September, I don't remember the exact date, I think maybe the 9th or 10th of September, we have a conference on that. It's here in Tzfat, in Hebrew, at the Michlala, at the College of Tzfat. We're gathering all kinds of people, and we'll be talking about that. It's an argument today among historians. What was the main incentive for coming to Tzfat? I'm among those that think that, of course, there were also economic reasons. Tzfat was the biggest city. I don't know if the people in Tzfat would believe me, but Tzfat was once the biggest town, biggest city in all of Israel then. Okay, bigger than Yerushalayim then. Okay, so we weren't a metropolis, but we were 25,000 people, half of them Jews. That's enough of a reason for people coming here. But I still think that with the industry, that still the reasons were mainly spiritual reasons, the proximity to Meron, and especially the fact in the belief that the Mashiach will arrive or will appear first in the Galilee. okay, Mashiach ben Yosef, but maybe even Mashiach ben David. He's waiting in Meron. In 1495 already, we know this tradition here in Tzfat, where the Mashiach is waiting in Meron. He's there in Meron. It's right near here, okay? We're the first stop on his way, okay? This is way before the tradition of the alleyway of the Mashiach here in Tzfat, okay? So this tradition is already then. We even have a tradition when the Mashiach will arrive. It seems that the Ari thought or knew about the tradition of his arrival in the year Shin Lamed Hey, which is 1575, Ad Ki Yavo Shilo, Belu Yikhat Amim, Shilo, Shin Lamed Hey, 1575. He passed away in Shin Lamed Bet, in Shin 1572. But there were, every now and then, okay, different years were seen as the year of the coming of the Mashiach, when he's supposed to come first in the Galil, or appear first in the Galil, which is already hinted by Rabbi Yochanan in the Talmud, in the Gemara, Masechet Rosh Hashanah. Rabbi Yochanan already then says, in Tveria, Atidin Ligael, the Sanhedrin will first come back to Tveria. And then this tradition came up to Tzfat. I think those are the main reasons, but we have here a number of reasons why people came to Tzfat, and maybe to my sorrow, they didn't go to Yerushalayim. That's why we had the earthquake, according to the Khatan Sofer, at least.
Wow, amazing. Thank you so much.